what would be the top skills which you can actually use to achieve a higher salary leadership roles in the market? That is a question. So let me share with you some of the skills which you need to build while you're going through the organization curve. Okay. Number one skill that you want to build out and build up is called strategic thinking and decision making. Strategic thinking and decision making. So, strategic thinking talks about how you can think about the things in a wider perspective, not just the perspective of a tactical problem solving. Tactical problem solving is what is my problem today? Let me solve it and I'm good about it. That's called the tactical problem solving. Strategic thinking and decision making requires a wider perspective, expanded thinking. Now, this requires a practice. This is a skill because it requires a practice. It cannot happen suddenly and then you say, today I got a dream that I'm going to think about becoming a PM in India. Doesn't happen. Okay. So strategic thinking and decision making becomes one of the key skill. Okay. Strategic communication and the interpersonal skill. Why am I saying strategic communication? Because for each one of you, the communication will differ from place to place, position to position, industry to industry, context to context. The communication will differ. So you need to ask yourself, where do I put the communication? Okay. Where do I put that communication? That is where you will be asking yourself a question. Number three, leadership and the management. Leadership and management. Why both are required? You cannot have only one of it and say, I'll be great. Management is required for execution. Leadership is required for the strategic thinking. Leadership does have a vision. Leadership does have people management. Leadership does have the sharing and change management. Whereas the management does have the delegation, team management, team building, execution at the ground level. So both these are complementary to each other. They're not opposite, they're not separate, isolated skill. Making sense so far? Yes, no. So if you are saying that I want to build this skill which can give me the higher salary, you need to differentiate those skills in the marketplace. Okay. Then comes the financial acumen and business understanding. How many of you are working on business understanding in whichever industry you are working with? Are you working on that? Do you understand the financial statement of your own respective company? So that is another aspect that you want to probably learn for the high paying leadership role. Then comes your adaptability and flexibility. Adaptability implies the anticipating and planning ahead to allow for contingency. Flexibility can be more immediate, situational, often with the need to accommodate others. Making sense so far? So, adaptability is to any level of situation, flexibility for a situational, contextual in nature, even though you know that it is different. Correct? Upskilling is one level of challenge that you are not exposed to. Because if you do not know the next level of skill, you will never become adaptable. You are never going to become the bigger decision maker. You are never going to become the resilient. Correct? So you need to ask yourself a question. Can I design this adaptability for myself and become more adaptable by deliberately putting the exposure in place? Deliberately putting the exposure in place. And unfortunately, many of us will only do the things when we are in the dying zone. That is a desperate mode. How many of you are like that? You'll only actually work when there is a fire in your belly, or I would say fire on your back. Fire in the belly तो होता नहीं है. Fire in the back होता है तो then people run. Right? So you need to ask yourself, am I actually building those skills? Then the skill of innovation and creativity. Innovation and creativity. This also requires you to solve the problem differently. Solve the problem differently. That means the same problem, can I solve it in a 2 or 3 different way? Can I eliminate the problem itself permanently? Now that requires a creativity, that requires an innovation. But what do we do generally? We just do the temporary fix to something. How many of you are working with a temporary fix right now? So it requires a deliberate exposure again. Technical expertise in your industry. How many of you know where your market is going, where your industry is going, where your function is going, where your domain is going? What are the advancements coming in terms of technology, in terms of changes, new trends? How many of you are studying, putting some hours into it? How many of you are putting some hours for yourself to know about where the tide is turning? Because the tide will turn automatically. So the question is, are we aware about at least our industry domain and function trend? Forget about rest of the things in the world. Okay, rest of the things in the world we will not be able to catch up anyway. And if you're not learning about it, who will do it for you? Then you will be a follower. Followers are not paid high. Followers are paid less. Do you understand? Those who have learned the generative AI and they are coding for the generative AI, they can actually create a chat GPT for themselves. They are being paid higher than the people who are just using the chat GPT like us. Do we all understand this? Yeah. So you need to ask yourself, can I put some dedicated time once in a month at least to understand what's going on? Where am I heading in my life? Where am I heading in my industry? Where am I heading in my domain? What is going on in my function? And so on and so forth. Now, if you just want to have a blind eye to all these things, then you become the follower. And again, I'll repeat, followers don't get paid higher. Okay? Then setter gets paid higher, not the followers. Okay? So you need to ask yourself, do I want to become a trendsetter or do I just want to follow the trend? That's a question comes. Okay? Then comes a drive for the result. It's constant pursuit of that excellence that needs to be in there. Not 1 day, not 2 day, not 3 day, not 4 day. Constantly you're pursuing that excellence every day, regardless of the situation. You are sick, you're out, you're still working, and you are working on yourself. There will be downturns, there will be upturns as well, but you are working on yourself and you are probably going through that journey. The question is, if you are not driven by that, your work ethic will slowly and steadily go down. How many of you have actually lost your work ethic? When you were young, when you joined the organization for the first time, you were very enthusiastic. You were ready to work for 12, 13, 14 hours a day. Now, if you are asked to probably work even for the 9 hours more than that, you kind of say, Arey, yaar, kitna kaam hai, thak gaya main. How many of you understand? Your capacity is going down. How many of you are realizing that? Your capacity is going down. And if your capacity is going down, that means your drive is not there. Your drive is not there. Because if your drive is there, capacity has no problem. People even stay awake in the entire night and do the work. Yes or no? Right? So if your drive is not there, then the capacity has a problem. Then comes what you already have told me, which is called the team building and collaboration. Team building and collaboration. Why both are required? Because team building requires people management, your people growing, people development, and so on and so forth. Whereas collaboration required you to probably deal with the peer group, senior group, client group, vendors group, outsiders, your competitors, your peer outside your organizations, and so on and so forth. That requires a different skill altogether compared to what you are actually doing in the team building. Making sense? So, team building and collaboration is another skill that you want to probably pursue. Last is my favorite, which I believe that you all should be putting in some investment of time, effort, energy for yourself, which is called the emotional intelligence and self awareness. How many of you agree with that? Emotional intelligence and self awareness. So, some of you are here today just now, you are actually absent physically and mentally both. Okay. Some of you are here who are present but not emotionally stable. Some of you are not even in present, even though you are looking at me. Okay. Now, this is a understanding that you require for yourself. Emotional intelligence and self awareness actually comes on top of all your skills. Why? Because it will always put you in a different orbit of growth compared to the people who are just talented with the skills. How many of you agree with that? Who are just talented. Talented, okay. I know how to probably sell. I know how to do the marketing. I know how to do finance. I know how to do the, let's say, training, HR, this, that. These are called the skilled people, talented people. But the self awareness and emotional intelligence put you in a different orbit along with the little skills as well. So, our emphasis is when you have to develop something, I would always first give emphasis on the self awareness and emotional intelligence. That is precisely the reason we start the career acceleration mastery with the clarity, mindset, and clarity, not with the CV, interview, or the negotiation. That is precisely all the modules, all the membership, whether it is GLC or ELC, it all starts with the self awareness, not with the any skill, because skill can be learned by anybody. Self awareness and emotional intelligence, if you master this, you can leverage any skill. So, whatever skills you have, you can leverage that. But if you are not mastering this one aspect, the rest of the skills won't matter in the market. Making sense? For example, let's say you know the leadership, team building, management, your collaboration, stakeholder management, communication, relationship building, and everything. Okay? You go for an interview, and the person in the interview asks you a question. The question is, okay, your colleague is not actually in agreement with you, and there is a big project at stake because of that. How do you solve this challenge? If you do not have that self awareness, right, and if you do not have the emotional intelligence, all these skills have no value in the market. How many of you realize that? Because you will not be able to answer that question that way. So the skill is already available. Skill is not a problem. How to use that skill in that particular situation at that point of time in that situation is a problem. Okay. So skill, all of you also have it. Okay. You all are skillful, otherwise you wouldn't have been in this room as well. Correct? So skill is always there. The question is, how do I use that particular skill in that particular moment? That requires a self-awareness. That requires an emotional intelligence. So if you mastered that part, the rest of the things are always taken care of. This is precisely what you need to master. If you really want to grow faster at a very high salary role, then this will help you.